For more on the China trade developments, let's bring in CNBC contributor Dewardric McNeal, who served in the Obama administration. He's now senior policy analyst at Longview Global. Dewardric, great to see you. I want to pick up where Dan left off, and that is the Chinese now have a window as to how to proceed with negotiations more so than they did before, perhaps. I mean, I read this somewhere. The monetization of U.S. trade policy is what we're witnessing right now. You wrote discretionary industrial policy. All of it means effectively you pay enough and you get to play here. And so I'm wondering if this sort of gives Beijing a little bit of leverage in terms of how to navigate this next phase of trade talks.
Hi, Ari, Melissa. I think it gives Beijing a lot of leverage, actually. To your point, what this has done is essentially confirm what Beijing had always believed, and that was Trump is more transactional than he is principled, particularly when it comes to national security. And if you press hard enough, if you incentivize, and if you show that you are persistent, that eventually you will fold. Look, I think it was said by Courtney earlier that this is not clarity. I agree with that. Chinese have very clearly said, regardless of what you decide on the H-20, we have our own concerns, and we're going to ask you to prove that, which opens up a whole lot of know-how when they start to dissect this chip, which they will. But what the Chinese have also said is, we don't really think that the H-20 is a quality chip anyway. What we're looking for are the H-100 and the B-100. And what the Trump administration has done with this decision is essentially said to Beijing, if the price is right, maybe we'll look at the H-100 and the B-100. So I think you've opened up a Pandora's box here with this decision. And I don't think the Chinese are going to back off. They're going to press advantage here as we move forward in these next 90 days.
Dewardric, Tim, so what are they looking for? What is the move on the chessboard for the Chinese here to counter this? What would be the best outcome for them? I mean, we kind of get it's not just about keeping tariffs where they were before Liberation Day, but drop us into the tech context where obviously China has their own chip aspirations and they have their own goal to maintain global leadership. So what does today mean for them?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to kind of focus on what does this mean long term. And long term, Tim, I think what we're trying to suss is where the Chinese are looking to fill gaps in their own development for high-tech chips and frontier models on AI. Like, that's the big game here. And I think for the Chinese, there are lots of deltas between what Nvidia can do and what some of their high-end chip companies can do. So they're looking to close this gap. I think Trump has given them that window. But let me just say quickly about what it means for Nvidia in terms of market share, Tim. And you and all the traders are familiar with this. The Chinese will continue to welcome Nvidia with limits over a period of time until they can close these gaps. And then they're going to get the Volkswagen treatment, the Tesla treatment, the Apple treatment, the Starbucks treatment. And so the real question I have, Tim, is how long will it, how many times does Lucy have to pull this football before our Charlie Brown corporation stop running to make the kick? I just don't understand this move. There's no long-term future for Nvidia in China.
Dewardric, in terms of China, the economy there, what position are they in to sort of play hardball? Because clearly things have been slowing in a pretty precipitous fashion.
Yeah, this is a great question. Look, not much has changed from our conversations about the Chinese economy from last year. Let's be clear. We still have a consumption problem. We still have a problem with deflation. Overcapacity, the Chinese government has even owned this as a problem now. So there are some real concerns about the Chinese economy. But again, it comes back to who can stomach the most pain. And as we talked about earlier in the year, the Chinese are not going to fold. They are prepared to take some pain. But ultimately, and it was mentioned earlier, their trump card here is our overdependence on critical minerals. So they're prepared to leverage that as much as they can with a weak economy and play a strong hand based on our vulnerabilities with respect to critical minerals.